Hey everyone, Tactics here, and in this video I'll be giving you guys the full rundown of Ruby Life Pools, one of the brand new dungeons coming in Dragonflight and part of the first season of Mythic Plus. I'll be discussing things like important interrupts, dispels, stops, and purges. I'll go through how to handle each boss, and I'll provide you with a simple, easy to execute route for the Thundering seasonal affix that will be great for pugging early on in the season. A couple of these guides are already out over on my channel, and I'll link that down below as well. And I'll be giving you guys guides to all 8 dungeons available in Season 1, as well as advanced routing guides, high key walkthroughs from a tank perspective, and other things like that once the season starts. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in seeing, make sure you do subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. With that said, let's hop into the dungeon itself, and right out of the gate here, you're faced with a big primal juggernaut. These guys have Excavating Blast, which is a random target 7-yard AoE that'll leave a slow puddle behind, so some area denial here early on in the dungeon. And they also have a tank buster in Crushing Smash. These are lieutenant mobs as well, so you can't stun them, CC them, anything like that. You just have to take them head on. Making your way in, you have a couple other earth elemental related guys. So you have the Primal Terra Sentry. These guys just have a stone missile attack, not interruptible, but it is stoppable, and it just throws a random target 4-yard swirly out, so not really very high priority at all. There's also a Flash Frost Earth Shaper here, and they have Tectonic Slam, which is very high priority. Another stop ability. You cannot kick this, but you can stop it, and it's a 40-yard party nature hit, so you do for sure want to make sure you stop that. Further into this room, you find a bunch of Flash Frost Chill Weavers. These guys just have a tank hit in Ice Bolt that you can interrupt, as well as a channeled shield into a nearby mob in Ice Shield. This is both interruptible and stoppable, of course, because it is a channel, and you won't want to do this because this can be pretty annoying if you don't deal with it, so make sure you do stop this ability as well. There's also Infused Whelps in this area. They just have Cold Claws, which is an interruptible or stoppable tank hit that is frost damage, and it will provide a stacking slow as well. And at 8 stacks, this will also freeze your tank solid. More on that later, but in this area, it's really not much of a problem unless you go running around all of the nearby eggs, which will spawn these whelps as well. There is a mini boss in this area also, Defier Draghar. He has Blazing Rush, which is a random target charge attack that bleeds anyone in the path. And he also has Steel Barrage, which is a series of tank hits over 3 seconds, where each hit spawns 3-yard swirlies that just get thrown out that you'll need to avoid. That brings you to the first boss of the dungeon, Melidrussa Chillworn. And throughout this fight, she'll use Hail Bombs, which is a frost party hit that also shoots swirlies at every player that turn into icicles and just sort of act as area denial for the rest of the fight. These do hit very hard if you come into contact with them, but they can be cleared with things like immunities to help save you some space. To make avoiding these a little bit more difficult though, Chill Storm will occasionally go out on one player, which detonates after a few seconds and spawns a giant pillar of frost that pulls all players towards it, deals ticking damage every second, and then explodes for even more party damage after 6 seconds. If you do end up getting sucked into this vortex, you take extremely high ticking damage, so you will want to run against this pull when it happens. There's also some adds you need to deal with during this fight when the boss casts Awaken Whelps. A bunch of those infused whelps that I talked about earlier spawn, and they're exactly the same as that trash we previously covered. They will freeze you at 8 stacks of using that Cold Claws ability, and because in this case they spawn so many of these whelps, it is very important to stay on top of things like kicks, AoE stops, and if needed, a magic dispel on your tank to get rid of their stack so they don't get frozen solid. Shortly after these whelps are spawned, the boss will shield herself with Ice Bulwark, prevent herself from being interrupted, and then start channeling Frost Overload, which just ticks for pretty heavy frost party damage every 2 seconds for 16 seconds. So this means you just want to destroy the shield ASAP so that you can kick that overload and stop the pulsing party damage. Outside of this, the tank will just be taking constant frost damage from the boss, who just spams Frigid Shard at them in between all of these other spells. Once you defeat this boss, you hop on the back of a dragon and fly to the upper level of the dungeon, where you have to work your way around the ring, killing 4 blaze-bound destroyer mobs in order to unlock the second boss. These are, of course, lieutenant mobs, and they have a few interesting abilities. So one, they do have Living Bomb, which is just a random target fire dot that ticks every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. And then after that 6 seconds, it will explode and hit all enemies within 6 yards and allies as well. So you can actually use this 6-yard hit to knock up, interrupt, and deal additional damage to the trash pack if you position it well. They also have Inferno, which is just a party hit that is a fire dot as well that ticks again every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. And then on death, they will use Burnout, which is a 20-yard AoE. It casts for 5 seconds, and when that 5 seconds is up, it pretty much kills everyone within 20 yards. There's a few other pretty common mobs in this area. First off are the Scorchlings, relatively weak mobs that will just use Burning Touch occasionally, interruptible and stoppable, and this is just a stacking magic dot on your tank. There's also Primalist Cinderweavers. These guys have Cinderbolt that they kind of spam cast. This is a random target fire hit, so it can actually be quite dangerous on higher fortified keys, and is something you will want a kick order on. They also have Burning Ambition, which is a stoppable or purgeable buff that they put on themselves that gives 50% haste and 25% increased damage taken. So potentially you could leave this on them and chain CC them and take advantage of that damage taken increase. The other common mob is the Primalist Fire Dancer. These guys have Flame Dance, another stoppable but not interruptible ability that just channels for 4 seconds, doing fire damage to the tank. But if this channel ever completes, it deals a pretty large party hit to everyone in your group. So you will want to make sure you stop this, not only to help your tank out a little bit, but also to save your own life. On death, these guys will do an 8-second channel called Blaze of Glory. This just pulses fire damage within 3 yards, and it rains swirlies everywhere that you need to dodge. So when combined with something like the Blazebound Destroyer, if these dies at a similar time, there could be a lot of potential movement here, so just be careful of that. There are also 2 dragon mini-bosses that patrol this area that are quite dangerous. First off, there's Thunderhead. This guy has a Storm Breath attack, just a random target channeled frontal ability that does not follow you, so you can just sidestep it. And this cast is relatively quick, so be very, very careful how far you are away from this mini boss and where he's turning when he does this. He also has a tank hit that is a mixed physical and nature damage hit with a big knockback called Thunderjaw, as well as a pretty nasty magic dot in Rolling Thunder. This goes out on 2 random players, and it explodes for party damage within 100 yards when it's either dispelled or when it expires in 8 seconds. So how you would want to handle this is have someone dispelled very, very quickly on this dot going out, and then the healer catches up, and then you let the second one expire, and hopefully you are caught up on healing so that second one expiring doesn't murder everybody. Note that this mob was significantly nerfed since the most recent beta test, so he may not be nearly as bad as he was on beta, but this was definitely a mob you wanted to avoid at all costs. On the opposite side of the upstairs ring is Flame Gullet. Like Thunderhead, he has a breath attack as well, Flame Breath. Again, random target, channeled frontal, does not follow the target, so you can avoid it. He also has a tank hit. This is Fire Maul. This is a physical and fire mixed. Instead of a knockback though, this has a fire dot attached to it. And then his special ability is Molten Blood, which causes him to do increasing pulsing party damage every 2 seconds while he's below 50% health. So the longer this guy lives between 50% and 0, the more damage he's going to do and the more dangerous he gets. So definitely a situation where you'd want to save your damage for when this guy hits 50% HP. Lining the inner ring of the upstairs area are these Primalist Shockcaster mobs, and these guys were pretty nasty, honestly. I recommend avoiding them for the most part, but what they do is, one, they have Lightning Bolt, which is another random target interruptible ability that you'll want to interrupt so you don't get blasted by that. He also has a random target curse ability in Unlucky Strike, and this just ticks very, very hard 4 times over 6 seconds, then explodes and stuns the target. So it's a pretty nasty ability. And finally, they have Thunderstorm, which is just a 20-yard AoE around the mob that knocks back everyone when the mob reaches 100 energy. Overall, not really a mob you want to fight, and is not really in your path either, so there's never really a reason to pull these guys. Once you've killed all 4 Blaze-bound destroyers, you'll be able to engage the boss Kokia Blazehoof, and this boss is all about positioning. At full energy, the boss will cast Ritual of Blaze Binding at a random player, which is just a big 12-yard AoE you want to avoid, followed by a Blaze-bound Firestorm ad spawning at that same location. This ad is very similar to the Blaze-bound Destroyer mobs you had to fight beforehand, with some very slight differences. It still has that Inferno party hit and its dot, as well as the Burnout 20-yard AoE on death, though this now will also leave behind Scorched Earth area denial that lasts until the end of the fight, so it is slightly different there. The last ability is a new interruptible party hit called Roaring Blaze, which of course you'll want to make sure is kicked. The tank buster on this fight is also pretty nasty. Searing Blows will strike 4 times over 3 seconds, dealing damage and applying a stack of the Searing Wounds bleed with each successful attack. So parrying and dodging, very big value here to prevent applications of that ability. Twice between spawns of the destroyer, the boss will use Molten Boulder. This is just a line attack aimed at a random player that stuns and knocks back anyone hit by it, and will go until it hits kind of terrain or for a maximum of 40 yards, where it'll then explode for massive damage to anyone within 12 yards of it. This also leaves behind that same scorched earth puddles, both in the line it travels as well as the 12-yard area it explodes in, so even more area denial there. This is why positioning on this boss is so important. You need to deal with the add while also not cutting off your path with the scorched earth and making sure that you have an escape route for burnout, also while not blowing yourself up with those boulders. How I recommend actually handling this boss is to have your group stacked for the vast majority of the fight. Once that Blazebound Firestorm is spawned, you pull the boss on top of it, you have the rest of your party bait where you want to put the boulder, so somewhere away from the direction you plan to travel, while there can also still be hitting that add at the same time. You also want to make sure that this bait is not towards any nearby terrain. For example, if you're pressed up against one of the nearby walls or trees, do not bait there because it will just instantly blow up and murder your entire party. Once that add is dead, use your escape route, get out of that explosion, and keep in mind that depending on how long it took you to kill this add, you may have a boulder being thrown at you while you're running away from that add. So again, try and stay together, try and have it so it aims the boulder towards one of the walls, not straight down the middle of the path, and then regroup near the boss again to summon the next add and just kind of repeat that process from there, moving around the ring as far as you need to until the boss is defeated, because there is no kind of reset point for the boss in this inner ring area. Once you've defeated the boss, a bunch of new mobs will now block your way towards the last boss. First off, there's the Storm Warriors. These guys just have Thunderclap. This is a 5-yard AoE nature hit around the mob that has a 6-second slow and 10% haste reduction attached to it. You can't stop this ability, unfortunately. You just have to kind of back up when this cast is going off. Tempest Channelers are also in this area. They have a tank hit that is interruptible in Thunderbolt, so try and kick that if you can, as well as a pretty large party damage channel in Lightning Storm. This just ticks every second for 6 seconds, and this can do a lot of damage here. These mobs are also lieutenant mobs, so there's nothing you can do about this. You just have to eat that damage, so make sure you are committing defensives, cooldowns, both healer and raid CDs here. This is where you will need them. The last ability they have is Summon Primal Thundercloud, and like it sounds, it summons a Primal Thundercloud. Now what these Primal Thunderclouds do is 1, have Tempest Barrier on them, which is a purgeable shield for 65% of their total health, so you can get them down very, very quickly, and 2, is cast Crackling and Detonation, so when their shield is gone, they'll try and charge at a random ranged player, and they'll put a 3-yard swirly on the ground around them. You can kick this as well though, or just nuke them down, or let them go blow up because they will die at the end of this cast anyways. Flame Channelers are also present here, another lieutenant mob. These guys have Flash Fire, which is a pretty high priority kick that you'll want to get. Is a random target channeled ability that splashes within 5 yards. Think that Lightning Storm, but all into one target that also splashes, so make sure you kick that. It also heals the caster during that channel as well, so definitely something you want to make sure it doesn't happen. Their other spell is Burning Vein, which is just a self-cast 50% haste buff that also puts a dot on them, but you'll still likely want to purge this because 50% haste is a lot of haste. There is a mini-boss in this area that you must defeat before the actual boss spawns, High Channeler Rivati. They have Shock Blast, which is a big tank hit that has a stacking magic dot, which you will want to, of course, kick. They have that same Lightning Storm that the Tempest Channeler has. They also have that Summon Primal Thundercloud ability, but note that they will spam this 4 times in a row when it comes out, so they'll spawn 4 Primal Thunderclouds as opposed to the 1 that the Tempest Channeler does. Finally, there's Tempest Storm Shield, and this is just an absorb shield the mini-boss gets by stealing the Tempest barriers from nearby Primal Thunderclouds. It builds up into this barrier, it channels then for 9 seconds, and if you don't break this shield within that 9-second window, you will be hit for a very, very lethal 40-yard party hit. So make sure you are either nuking those Primal Thunderclouds down so the shield they contribute is not very much, or big damage into the shield itself. Ideally, both of those things. When you've killed the High Channeler, Erkhart, Stormvein will jump down onto the platform and you can begin the final boss fight. Initially, you'll just be fighting him, while Kyrakka flies around wreaking havoc with her roaring fire breath. This is just a random target frontal attack that will apply Inferno Core to anyone hit. This dot ticks 6 times over 3 seconds, then it explodes in a 5-yard radius, leaving behind several flaming embers for 45 seconds. Note that touching any of these ember puddles on the ground will reapply Inferno Core to you, so you definitely want to make sure you're staying away from these while they're active. During this first phase, Kyrakka will also flame spit random players, dealing a chunk of fire damage and also applying Inferno Core to them. So again, this boss has a lot of area denial. In terms of Erkhart himself, he has a mixed physical and nature tank hit in Storm Slam. This also applies a 100% nature damage taken magic debuff to the tank as well, so you want to make sure you are dispelling this on cooldown to prevent your tank from being one-shot by this ability. He also has Interrupting Cloudburst, a nature party hit that, like it says, will interrupt you for 4 seconds if you're caught casting when this goes off. Finally, he has Winds of Change, which deals light ticking damage to the party every second for 5 seconds, and it also pushes them as well as any of these flaming ember patches during those 5 seconds. So be careful here that none of these puddles get pushed into you while you're running against these winds. Once either Erkhart or Kyrakka reaches 50% HP, Kyrakka lands and the second phase begins. In this phase, you'll deal with everything that happened in the first phase, except Flame Spit now applies to all 5 party members, so a ton more damage is going out on all 5 players, as well as way more puddles of Flaming Ember for you to avoid, making this phase pretty hectic, definitely something you'll want to Bloodlust. We found that trying to focus as much damage as possible into Kyrakka in phase 1 to be the best option, did not always in range, especially for melee cleaves, but to try and position the boss whenever the dragon comes down to do their fire breath is a very good thing to do, because the most dangerous thing in phase 2 is that Inferno Core, by far the most dangerous part of that second phase. So the lower you're able to get Kyrakka before pushing that second phase initially, the less you'll have to burn down in that phase itself, and the faster you'll be able to get through that most dangerous part of the fight. So it's pretty much a race once you enter that second phase. From there, let's go through my simple pug-friendly route for this dungeon here in Mythic Dungeon Tools. For anyone interested, I'll be posting the link to this route down in the description below if you want to import it for yourself. Right off the bat here, of course, you have that big Primal Juggernaut, and you can just drag him, DPSing him down while you pull these next packs, because there's a decent distance here, but really kind of weird to just pop your CDs on one mob, so just kind of hit them on your way, drag all these, group these guys together, pop your CDs there, blast them. Then you have a couple pulls here. These are, again, Terra Sentries don't really do much in this area. This pack has 4 Terra Sentries, really not the biggest deal. The priority here is definitely going to be on your Chill Weavers. Just pull these guys back towards this first pack to try and avoid these guys on the side here. Again, if you can avoid some of these packs on the sides, it may be good. The problem is that this looks much wider than it actually is in reality. It's very, very hard to dodge these guys, so be careful there. Again, I'm going at 105% for this route just because there is a lot of things that are either quite difficult for you to skip in a pug just by walking around it, and I don't want to do too many like invis pod skips, that kind of thing, especially early in the season, right? Those are probably really expensive, so I'm trying to W key as much as possible here. It is just very hard in this dungeon where you have so much forced trash to kill. So moving forward here, pulling these guys together. Again, you can avoid this if you're able to. If not, oh well. Hitting that Primal Juggernaut. This guy pats in a line here, so you may need to wait for him to pat a little bit closer to you to add him to this pack. But you can always drag him into this initial blue pull here, wait to pull the Defier Draghar, and then once this Juggernaut is down, then you can add the Draghar to this pack. It just depends on where this guy's pat is. Once you've killed all this trash here though, move into the first boss, then you fly your way up. I have you moving around clockwise, so you'll come out here, then moving around clockwise. Most of these pulls are pretty conservative. If you're feeling a little risky, you can be more aggressive, but the reason for that is these Cinder Weavers. Again, they have that random target, pretty hard hitting Firebolt ability that you'll want to kick, and just pulling too many of these is definitely bad news for sure, so I've tried to keep it relatively low key here. Note that the Flame Gullet mini boss is actually located around here for the most part. He does do a bit of a patrol in this area, as well as does Thunderhead, but in all likelihood you're going to be pulling Flame Gullet just because you're kind of forced to a little bit, but Thunderhead is something that is dodgeable. Could be maybe difficult to dodge him in a pug, but I'll try and show you how to dodge him over here. So basically what this guy does is when you're over in this area, Thunderhead will go fly around in a patrol, and what that patrol is he'll come down this way, he'll fly up here, go down here, around this thing up here, back and back, okay? That is his patrol. So this can be a little tricky to avoid. You want to make sure where he is. He will sit here for a little bit, do this patrol, then come back and sit here for a little bit. That's how he works. And so kind of what the goal is here to do is to always pull the trash mobs to these fountains or stairs that are over here. There's stairs here, there's stairs here. So what you want to try and do is like pull up this blue pack here, pull it down to the stairs, kill it there, He'll be padding around. He will not aggro you if you're near the stairs here, and your entire party will want to be towards those stairs. So be careful. Again, similarly, get this green pack, pull it back over towards these stairs so you're not in the middle of his patrol, then run through when he's not going to be padding through the middle of this area. Pull this pink pack, pull it to the stairs. Same idea, wait for him to go on his pat, run through, go to the boss. That's how you would save yourself from aggroing Thunderhead here. Worst case, you pull Thunderhead, pop some cooldowns. He has been significantly nerfed, like I mentioned, so we haven't tested the nerfed version of Thunderhead on the beta. He got a pretty nasty nerf to him just this past weekend on Sunday, so he could be safe to pull now, but I still would recommend avoiding him. Also, again, 105%. 105%. I'm skipping mobs, and we're still at 105%. So yeah, it is a little rough count in this dungeon. You're going to be very aggressive in skips and hierarchies for sure. It's just, I don't know how much I trust pugs to be skinny in this area and not aggro mobs, right? So be very, very careful with that. Note that after the second boss is down, and again, note for the second boss actually, before I say after the second boss, you can go around this entire circle and the boss will not reset. So use your space as much as you need. Be aggressive with your usage of space if you need to be. But again, past the second boss here, I'm recommending a skip here because, again, if you don't skip this, you are just now at like a bajillion %, right? Like you're at 111% almost. It's just there's so much count that is in your way that there's no way to get around it without skipping. So if you can get past these two, feel free to drop them. If you're not able to get past them with whatever skip you're using, just add them. That's fine. Pull them into this pack on the left here. Note that this blue pack is actually located right here on this pillar. So it's not actually way over here in this corner. It's right there. These guys are actually further back on the platform a little bit. So just pull these guys with these thunderclouds. Pull these guys together. Do this as the mini boss pack. Again, high channeler. Pretty spooky mob. Deal with that guy. And then you have the final boss. There we go. That wraps up this full Mythic Plus dungeon guide for Ruby Life Pools in Dragonflight Season 1. As I mentioned before, guides just like this for every Season 1 dungeon will be coming over on my channel soon, and once the season actually starts, I'll be putting out plenty of other content, including advanced routing guides for every dungeon, and even high-key walkthrough videos from a tank's perspective. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, be sure you guys do hit that subscribe button. It's free to do, and your support helps me to create more content just like this. If you have any questions at all about anything in this video or any other dungeon, feel free to drop that down below in the comment section or come stop by my Twitch channel at Tactics and I'll do my best to answer. Otherwise, as always, thank you all so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.